BRRRAK, how are you, mate?
Good, mate. How are you?
All good, thank you. So thanks for coming on another episode of the Diving Deep podcast.
Good to be here, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No problems at all. So I've got a little intro that I'm going to do for everybody who doesn't know who you are. 1 second. Okay, so BRRRAK is a DJ and producer based in Glasgow, made his name with early residencies playing cool eclectic sets from funk to soul to 80s and house. His own productions, he's had releases on Lyceum Social Club, Good For You Records, Juice Music, Walk of Shame Records, and he scored a #1 Traxsource hit with his track Faith in the People, which gained lots of support and was played at a Defective live stream. Pretty star-studded bio, my man.
Yeah, mate, that was pretty much, obviously, when I started, I was 16, under 18, stuff like that. But everything else, production-wise, you just mentioned, was pretty much 2020, when we all found ourselves pretty time-rich and able to sit down in the studio and get a lot of work done during the lockdown, you know. So that was the best part of that for me. All that stuff came to fruition, having a bit of time on my hands, you know.
Yeah, I remember. Wow. So, mate, where I'd like to start from is, I suppose, go a little bit further back than just house music or dance music. So, where would you say sort of like your first intro to really liking music came from?
Well, my big influences are like you said, funk, soul, disco. My #1 all time is Chic, Nile Rodgers, Bernard Edwards. Just feel good, cannot whack it. So loads of my musical influence came from there. You know, there was kind of, unfortunately for me, I was never brought up with that kind of music. A lot of guys from our kind of era, you know, their parents were into that stuff, Motown, funk, soul, and they were brought up with that. Unfortunately, you know, for me, there was a different vibe. My mum and dad were classically trained musicians, so there was a lot of that in the house. That gave me the benefit of learning a bit of music theory down the road, you know, but it never kind of grooved with me, if you will. You know, it was obviously when I came across these soul and funk disco artists, that's when my real love of music began, I would say, mate.
Yeah, it's quite funny, isn't it? I mean, generally speaking, that it is interesting you saying that, because most people that I speak to, they normally say it comes from their parents, but in your instance, actually it didn't. But you picked up other things from them, like you say, around learning a bit of music theory, which I'd imagine helps you quite a lot today in your own music when you're making it.
Yeah, well, you know yourself from the equipment we all use now and the DAWs. You know, you don't need any musical theory at all. The samples are out there. There's MIDI you can grab. But I think it lends something else to my production. It's like another string to my bow. You know, I will go to the keys and play a bass line. I will add some mid layers with some pads. I'll do my own chords. You know, you would never know, and with the end product, whether I've played that or taken it from a sample pack. But it's nice to know. You know, it's nice to be able to go to the keys and use that, and you kind of feel it. So maybe I used to like to sit down, and we had a piano in the house. I'd like to play it. So, you know, it's nice to think I took something from that and I'm using it now every day.
It's cool, mate. It's cool. So fast forwarding a little bit, what about, I hate saying house music because like not everybody like started on house music. Like I started on like trance and hard house. So I'm just going to say dance music. What about your first influences or sort of like entrance into that style of music? Where did that come from?
Well, same, mate, same as you. It was just the time we're from, I guess. It was, you know, the Ibiza, Balearic vibes, all the trancers. You had the old Kevin and Perry. Remember that? You know, that was all this. It was just what was there. So I had, when I was at school, I had SoundLab 1600s, the absolute cheapest, worst decks ever made. Belt drive, you had to like start them up 10 minutes before you got a mix just to get them up to speed. They were absolutely terrible. But I used to go HMV, there's 23rd Precinct in Glasgow. There was a lot of nice record shops. So even at a young age, I was going, you know, when you were 15, 16, even actually I was younger than that, 14, you know, you had money for one record. So it was, you know, it was a day out and pick your record wisely, come home and add it to your set. You only had, you know, your pile of records, so you could add it in gradually. I remember the first time I used moving on from the Sound Labs and onto a set of Technics. It was just night and day. Like, this is what it's about. This is it.
Yeah, I remember it well, mate. I mean, my first set, like yours, mine were Newmark belt drive, and just the same. Like, they weren't too bad actually, because I didn't really know any different. But then the belt started stretching and the motor started getting worn out. And I was saying this to somebody else the other day, that I'd be listening to it and I couldn't work out whether or not it was me that was like hearing it or just imagining it, or it was actually going whoa, whoa, like it was getting out of time. But I realised that it absolutely was getting out of time, because you know, it's like when you're on them all the time, they're not great equipment, so they just wear out, don't they? You know,
certainly. I think using stuff like that, it meant that when you moved on to professional industry standard stuff, it made you a better DJ, I think. You know, because you've constantly chasing the beat to keep your beats matched, and you had to be very on the ball to make belt drive decks to get even a short mix out of them, you know.
Yeah, I can remember the first time that I actually, like you say, used a set of Technics. It was actually in a record shop, and I used to buy a lot of records from there. And he was like, "Oh, come round and have a mix." And I was getting to the stage where I could sort of mix fairly competently. I can remember putting my hand on the vinyl and going like that, and it just going woof, you know, and thinking, "Fucking hell, like this is what it's actually about," you know, because with, you know, it's like with belt drives and even like the cheaper direct drive ones, you know, you'd go like that and it wouldn't take off. You'd have to catch it up. You can
almost press play on the way you do on a CDJ, you know, with 1210s.
I see you've still got one in the back as well.
Mate, I've got my 1200 there. Actually, one of them died recently, so I now have a Mark 5 and my trusty old Mark 2 as well. Mainly now, they're mainly there now for sampling, mate. I like to sample from vinyl. I think it's got a nice sound and feel to it. Cool. You find stuff you probably won't find online as well, you know.
Yeah, definitely, mate. So that leads us quite nicely into sort of like what I want to ask you next, actually. So for people that are going to listen to this, could you sort of like describe what your like vibe is from a DJ and production standpoint?
Yeah, well, unbeknownst to me, it turns out I'm a Jack and House artist. I never set out to go down that road, mate, but it's where I get all the traction from the online stores. So you've got to ride the wave, you know. And it's not a sound I dislike at all. I love the skippy snares and hats, and taking old samples and flipping them and making nice new grooves. So I fell into that, and I'll just keep going with that, you know, because I'm a house head. I like you are, mate. I know you are as well. So, you know, I like everything. I always liked all the older funky house stuff. And, you know, all the way to tech house, some techno. People like Kerry Chandler and stuff like that, you know. That stuff's nice as well. Living in Glasgow, you know, things tend to get harder quite quicker when you're at gigs here, you know. But it's like I say, I'm just a house guy. I never wanted to pigeonhole myself into one subgenre of house. As long as it's house, it's mainly feel good stuff I make and listen to, and if I enjoy it, I'm happy. You know, I think that's the main thing. You know, someone said to me once, I said to them, you know, I've kind of caught this wave, this jacket house wave. I was like, do you think I should go with that? Do I want to do that? And they're like, well, do you enjoy making it? And I was like, yeah. They're like, well, you've answered your own question. You know, that's as long, because I think you can tell when something's forced, you know, in any walk of life, you know, you can tell when something's forced.
Yeah, it's a funny old thing, music production. Obviously, we spoke about it quite a bit, and you know, if you make music or you do some kind of art, you're probably going to speak to like-minded people, and it's getting to that place where you find your own sort of niche and your own thing, and you like it and you're comfortable with it, and you know how to operate it, and you know how to get from A to B. I think is quite difficult. It can take people a long time. But like you say, the essence of it is, do you actually like what it is that you're doing? Do you like the end product? Do you like the fact that, you know, you go and find old samples and stuff like that? And if you do, then you're probably not too far away from being on the money. And it can always evolve, can't it? But being sort of around what you're probably going to end up doing for a bit at least.
I think so. I think you're totally right there. You know, it makes things a bit more difficult from my standpoint, because, like I said, this city's very techno orientated. It's harder. People like tech. They like minimal. That's what's considered cool. You know, that's what most of the scene stuff is. But we do have a thriving disco scene as well, and jacking tends to fit quite nicely in with disco house and even old disco records as well.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because I don't know. I mean, it might just be like my perspective. I feel like sampling and using samples or whatever the case may be, it's got a bit of a bad rap over this, like, I don't know, last few years. But all the best records, well, a lot of them were all from old records. They were all sampled from old records. I mean, throughout the 90s, you know, and on and still are, but certainly that period in the late 90s, all of those tracks that you would consider like classic house tracks were all sampled from old records.
100%. You can't argue with any of that, you know. Even hip hop, you know, if you think about all the top hip hop artists, all the big hip hop records over the year. I'm talking about proper hip hop, you know, but it was all sampled, you know. That's where that all started. I remember speaking about. Sorry, mate. On you go.
No, I said it's an art in itself, isn't it?
Definitely. I know guys that. I mean, their whole music, their production, start to finish, is basically samples. You know, and it's an incredible art. I don't do that. I don't sample to that extent. I'll take one sample. I'll take my main sample, maybe grab a few bits from a track, and then I'll add my own MIDI bassline stuff like that. I always re-drum it as well. But like I say, you know, I know guys that'll just chop something up. And it's not an edit, you know, it's not, they're nowhere near edit territory. They're just using the individual parts of the original record to make something completely new. And that's an art form, you're right.
Well, if anybody is keen on understanding a little bit more about sampling, I'm going to give another sort of YouTuber and DJ producer shout out. It's a guy called Felix Leiter, and there's a YouTube channel called Show Me the Sample. Have you ever come across it?
I've not. I've heard the name. Though. I have heard the name.
It goes back to loads of classic tracks. It's so good. And what they do is they go back and they dig out where the sample came from, how it was used. And mate, I mean, some of it is unbelievable. Daft Punk, you know, One More Time, you know, oh my God. I mean, it's like if you look at like, if you think about like the main sample, they've picked out like a bit here, a bit here, a bit here. If you looked at the waveform, not that anybody's probably going to know what that is, and they've made it into like this anthem, and you think, fucking hell, like, I mean, that's a whole different level of sampling, really.
That's it. You know, I struggle personally. I struggle to get the right amount of energy from a house track without having a solid sample.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always need to be in the forefront of a track. You know, you can take maybe the mid-range from a sample or the bottom end, but there's something about live music that you just can't replicate it.
Yeah.
No matter how good the software is you use, or even hardware for that matter. You know, there's just no way to replicate live musicians doing what they do.
No, I agree, mate. I mean, I do quite a few edits, as you know, mostly for my own sets, and then I just give them away to people. And I'm actually working on an edit at the minute, Melody, you know, the techno disco tool tune.
Yeah.
Well, it's obviously from a Sister Sledge record. That's where the sample's from. So I went and dug out the original sample, and I mean, don't get me wrong, that's not a really complex one, because he's just taken basically the intro, like the first 16 bars, and sped it up and timed it up a bit better. But yeah, it's really interesting, like all these old, really good house tracks, you know, Armand Van Helden, You Don't Know Me, Soul Searcher, they're all from old disco records. That's where they're from.
So the difficulty nowadays is finding something new and original.
Yeah.
What I actually do sometimes is take things that have been sampled, like you say something's been a massive sample, like that techno disco tool. There's other parts of the track, and I think people, like, they're scared to go near it because they go, "Oh, Melody's done that. That's been done. It's been done to death." But there's always like a bridge to a track. There's a chorus. There's a verse. There's different parts of instrumentals, and I think sometimes you can find something sneaky in there just because of the fact that people are like, "I'm not going near that. It's been done to death."
100%.
And I agree with that to a certain extent. It's nice to find something new, but we're starting to struggle now, mate, in 2022.
yeah. Well, mate, like we've spoke about before, like there's not a lot that's original now, is there? You know, it's all been touched and done before to a degree. But yeah, I mean, there are people, like, I don't want to, you know, shout out anybody, that they actually take the whole of the sampled track and add a new clap to it, or, you know, a hi-hat, and they actually bring that out, they rename it and bring it out as their own music, which is, you know,
well, it's certainly frowned upon. I mean, I don't have a problem. I mean, what you've said there, that process that you've explained there to me is an edit. So if you want to, if you give the original artist a shout and put it down as your new edit, I don't have a problem with that. I use a lot of them in my sets because, as you know, sound systems, etc., they fit nicer. The new frequencies, they've beefed them up, big new kick, hat, stuff like that. It lends itself well now to newer sets, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a funny one, I gotta say, but I just want to talk a little bit about sort of, what is it up until now would you say you're sort of like most proud of? Is that anything that sticks out to you?
Well, definitely, you mentioned it in the bio at the start. I think it's got to be the number one jacking hit I got with Faith in the People on a friend of ours, Jay's label, the Cultural District, that's what it's called, isn't it? So it was a big one, like, Cultural District Records, that's right. So it came as a complete surprise to me, because, like I say, it was in amongst the lockdown and stuff like that, and it was just one of those ones that it's not actually something that I ever considered my best work. But like we say before, it shows the power of the sample, because it's obviously something that had been done before, and it's Candido Jingo. So it's a massive track. Strangely for me, it's been something I've played for years, but it was never it's never been an absolute floor filler for me. You know, it's been more of a warm-up track or something. Yeah. So it came as a shock to me how much the track meant to so many people, and how in certain places in the world it's like prime time the tune, you know, which is great in a way, that it was just a complete accident. That somebody said it was, how did they said, oh, it's Jingle without the money shot, you know. So I'd take a part of it, and then the vocal as well. I think they're just a nice vocal hook from somewhere completely different. And actually, right now, I can't remember where I stole that from, but it came together nicely, you know. And then it was doing really nicely in the charts and stuff like that. And then, like you say, it got a play on the Defected Virtual Festival, which rocketed it to #1. Shows the power of the big label. Something that we can't really do ourselves. But like that's probably the highlight so far. I think it got me noticed in a way as well. You know, for a long time, you're just releasing stuff. It's good. You're starting to. I always say, I've worked hard, not clever. You know, I've been at this for many years, and it's just been continual little steps of little rungs up the ladder, just continually. There's never been one big breakthrough moment, which is a great thing when it happens to people. You know, I've never grudge anyone that if you get that big breakthrough moment. So when I got the #1, you know, I was always very aware, as we know, Traxsource, that's where DJs buy music. You know, if you speak to Joe Public, he doesn't probably know what that online store is, you know. So it's never going to be stratospheric stuff, but it's nice to know that you've been accepted by other DJs, like-minded producers, and people are playing your music, which is nice to know. If people are going there and buying it, I'm guessing they're playing it, you know. You would like to think so. So that's been the highlight for me so far, mate.
Yeah, mate, it was amazing. I remember it well, because we sort of like, it wasn't probably long after we'd sort of come into contact with each other, because I really liked that track that you put out on Juiced. What was it called? The piano one.
Oh, Envy. Yeah.
Oh, mate, I love that. I really did. You know, Jesus, if there was ever a track that, if that would have went on a bigger label, it would have killed it. So, mate, once you get further down the line, once that contract runs out, I reckon give it to somebody else. You know.
Yeah, I'll give it to you, mate. That's another one actually. Just Music. They came back and said, you know, they said, oh, we really like this, but we're a jacking label. And originally it wasn't, you know. Originally it was straight house, which I was doing more at the time. It was just classic piano house at the time. So I said to them, you know, I like the label though. I like what you do. I like the stuff you're putting out at the moment. So I said, I'll go back to the drawing board, and I went back and I added some skippy snares and hats and stuff like that. Sent it back, and they were like, yeah, that's it now. We'll take that and put it out. It did pretty well for me as well, thankfully. Started getting some traction from the online stores on that. So yeah, it was that was kind of one of the first ones. I think that was 2020 as well, possibly 2019. But yeah, that's when I started seeing some real kind of traction.
Yeah, wicked tune. Question for you, you know, Faith in the People, you know, because this one I didn't know the answer to. Obviously the title at the time it was released definitely resonated with people as such.
Yeah.
The lockdown and everything. Did you sign that track to the record label and it come out pretty quickly, or had you had it signed for a while and it was just more of a coincidence thing that we went into a lockdown and etc.?
Yeah, coincidence, mate. They'd had it for a while. They'd had it sitting on the back burner for a while. So I don't know whether maybe Jay had it already had it scheduled for release, or maybe it was a shrewd move on his part as well, because, like you say, it did kind of resonate at the time. It just blew my mind. It was the gift that kept on giving. I ended up getting support from the likes of Michael Gray, who's one. Well, Maury's Full Intention stuff was like a big influence to me, but massive name in the industry, and somebody I thought that you'd never be spoken about in the same sentence, never mind he's actually. And I think the great thing about nowadays and things being online is it's there in black and white. I've often wondered, how do you know if your track's getting absolutely smashed in Ibiza? You don't, you need to be lucky and a video pops up or something.
Yeah, it's so hard, mate. I mean, obviously when you send a track out on promo, like a DJ mail out, you get feedback from them, and there might be lots of top artists that like it, but you don't know whether or not they've played it, like you say, unless you've been tagged in a video, or obviously you've got like song stats, so you can tell whether or not they've charted it or put it in their radio shows. But yeah, seeing it being played live, unless you're, by coincidence, you come across one of their stories or you get tagged, you just never know. It's so hard to know, isn't it? Yeah.
There's a lot of tracks like that, that they're like scene tracks.
Yeah.
You got people at after parties and underground clubs, and they're the absolute track of the moment. But they might be on a small label and they might not do anything otherwise.
Yeah.
So, I think that'd be quite a nice space to be in as well. That, like everyone, that your track's getting played out and everyone loves it, but it's not huge. It's not huge in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I can definitely say, mate, my edits that I do, they get played more than my actual music. It's just how it is, isn't it? It's, everybody loves an edit or a bootleg, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We're both DJs, you've got to play to who's in front of you a lot of the time. And I think that's what will be nice. It's nice about getting booked under your artist name.
Yeah.
People, you obviously need to build a profile first to the point where people want to come and see you and let you play what you want to play. But up until like a real high level, and that's where you're at, you need to play to who's in front of you. And it's going to have to be a lot of recognisable stuff, like your Burns edit and stuff like that. I use that one quite a lot.
Yeah.
Usually smashes the place. I'm not going to lie to you, mate. Glad you sent me that. But no, that's another string to your bow, making edits that people are using and DJ friendly. And somebody you get to the point where there's guys that make edits and maybe like Dr. Packer and stuff like that. You can practically play it on the fly. You don't need to listen to it.
No, yeah, they're so good. Yeah, it's a funny one. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, for anybody listening who's a producer, it's a good way of getting your name in front of big people's, eyes, because they also want little snipers for their sets that not everybody else has necessarily got. So if you do it and you either send it to people or you put it on a promo, then they'll get it first and they'll think, well, it's a bit more exclusive, and then do what you want to do with it. But yeah, it is a good little tip for people if people are listening in. It's good to, and it helps also bring new people into you as an artist, because obviously that might be how they find you, and then they see other stuff that you're doing and they might like it. So yeah,
that's true. I was actually funny you mentioned that. I was speaking to a DJ pal of mine recently, and he was saying he was talking about you used to go digging for stuff and you could find sneaky tracks, and you knew you'd go out Saturday night and you'd be like, oh, nobody else has got this, you know. But he was saying literally the only way for that to happen now is to make your own edit and not give it out and not put it online, even in a DJ mix or on YouTube or anything like that, because they'll rip it, you know. So it's it's a case of if you want to be that guy that has the cheeky edits, you need to make them yourself, and then you need to not distribute them. I've never been one for that, mate. You know, it's like it's nice, like you'll give them out, which is nice. You want people to play your music. I think, you know, particularly like guys like us that make original music as well. That's part of the deal. You want people to play it.
100%. I think if you're an A-list DJ, or you're high up the tree, I get it, you know, because it's like, then you don't need to give anything to anybody, because the reality is you've already got the big fan base, you've already got all those things. So you might just keep it for your own sets, and then you might get other big DJs saying, oh, what's that? You might give it to them. But yeah, at levels below that, I think, do you know what, like how I do it is I keep it for myself for a few months, try and get a bit of footage or play it in my live streams and stuff like that. And then the next thing I do is, if it's good and I think, yeah, people like it, I'll put it out on DJ Promo just as a tool. So it's not, I'm not looking to make any money out of it. Then other people will get it. And then maybe a few weeks after that, I'll just put it out on SoundCloud to anybody who wants it, you know, because it's done. You know, I've got what I wanted out of it, which was a little bit of a treat for my own sets. Hopefully some people that are further down the line than me might like it. And then anybody can have it.
Yeah, totally agree. But like I say, you know, if you do want to have those sneaky edits and you're playing out all the time, you're probably going to have to make them yourself now, unfortunately.
Yeah, they don't come along, do they? You know, it's like you say, it goes back to like the old vinyl days. You know, you could find, you know, obviously they used to just come out on white label, and you would find these like, well, bootlegs was massive, wasn't it, on vinyl? You know, they're called edits now. I don't know why they're called edits, but it's a bootleg. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. No, I guess. I don't know. You know, it's like you were saying before. I think if you're, you know, even the guys that bootlegged before, they never put their own name on it. You would have, they would still like put up the fact that it was their remix, you know, and they might even call it the bootlegs remix, just to let you know. But I remember that's what they always said, wasn't it? The biggest compliment you could get when in the vinyl days was bootlegging, like somebody going to the trouble of making vinyls of your track, you know. So it's like they're saying, it's piracy at the end of the day, but it's the biggest compliment you can get.
Mate, I'll tell you, like a really like well-known record shop from where I am, like in Birmingham, it's called Hard to Find Records. It was huge, you know, it was massive. There was thousands upon thousands of vinyls there. Well, I don't want to drop them in it. I don't imagine anybody's going to listen to this, but if you do, apologies. They used to do bootlegs of bootlegs.
Yeah.
And resell it, you know. Mate, my mate who used to distribute vinyl to me was like, mate, you wouldn't believe, honestly, like, I mean, they produce like different versions, and I mean, sometimes it says like I'd go in there and I'd have like 100 of these white label bootlegs, drum and bass, whatever the case may be. So they'd end up selling 5,000 of them because they just get a recut, you know. But that's a little bit more tricky to do now. You know, and be a little bit more careful with it because it's all a little bit more visible, isn't it?
I think just the price of making vinyl now is different level, isn't it? That's why most of your independent labels aren't really doing it, or if they're doing it really small scale. But you know, it's nice to see the big boys still putting out the wax, because it's nice to be able to get some good quality tunes still on vinyl.
Yeah, I mean, mate, for me, it's where I started, like yourself. Pretty much every podcast that I do, generally speaking, if it's anybody sort of our age group, you never lose the love for it. I haven't brought any for a while because I haven't got my turntable set up at the minute just due to space. But you know, I like buying older classic vinyl. I still get a buzz out of it, even though, you know what it's like, you buy it and you generally don't even play it. I still like the fact that you own it and it's yours and it's in your hand. You know, it's never ever left me.
Yeah, I got rid of loads when I went digital with the DJing, just purely for space, and I regret it every day, you know. But I'm starting to pick up some of the records that I let go years ago again.
Yeah, I did the same. Did exactly the same.
You know, it's one of those things, you know, space sometimes is at a premium and it demands that you get rid of stuff, and unfortunately massive piles of records aren't the easiest thing to store.
No, 100%. I mean, mate, you can't see, but down this side of my room, I've got about 7 or 8 boxes of vinyl, and like you say, I actually don't have any more room in this particular room to store anything. So my missus was like, you know, it's going to have to stop. You know, you can't keep, you know, we can't keep adding another box in, you know, because the box only holds like 50 records, and if you're really, you can start racking that up.
Yeah, luckily before I got rid of anything, I like vinyl ripped it. So I had a digital copy, but it's not the same. Like you say, it's nice to own the vinyl.
Yeah, 100%, mate. So what is sort of what's the dream for you, mate? What would be like utopia if you could make it happen?
Just I love DJing, so I love playing out. Most of the time, I'm playing to a brief, you know. So because that's my bread and butter, I'm lucky enough that I can go out. I hold down maybe 5 residencies, so that's my working week, and the rest of the time I spend with my family and making music. So it lends itself nicely. It's, you know, you are tired because you're out all night, and then you're up in the day as well trying to make this happen and spend time with the family. But it does lend itself well, and I always consider myself lucky to be able to make a living from that. But the other side of that is, like I was saying before, you can only play to who's in front of you. So although I'm not henpecked as such, at this stage in the game, there's nobody telling me what to do, but I've got a job to keep. So, you know, so at the end of the day, I play to who's in front of me. So the dream for me is to get to just get a few bookings here and there that I can go out and play under the BRRAK name and play what I want to play to like-minded people who like the same music as me. I'm not, like I say, you know, I bet when you ask most people that, they're like, oh, I'll reach for the stars, you know, and they want to play space and just travel the world. But you know, my family, man, now I've got 2 young children. I like to be at home, but I would never say never if it chapped my door. You know, I'd love to get just a few quality bookings spread out over the year, nights to remember that I enjoy, you know, and just keep making music as well. And obviously the dream for me is to get signed to some bigger labels. You know, I think now the playing field's been leveled slightly. You've got independent labels and your behemoths, your Defecteds and Tool Rooms of the world. But you know, we can all do a bit, releasing on kind of smaller labels, you know. So yeah, like I say, I'd obviously like to see something one day on a vinyl, on a big label. That would be the icing on the cake for me. But like I say, you know, it's been I will say that I've worked hard, not clever. So just little incremental stages doing this over the years, I've gathered a bit of traction. So I'm thankful for where I'm at now, because it's further along than 2 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
So as long as I can keep, like, maintain where I am and maybe push on a bit, I'll be happy.
Yeah, mate, it's good, man. Honestly, like, it's like you say, people in our positions who either do music almost full time or whatever the case may be, who don't hold down a job that they hate, you know, which is sadly, there's more people than there should be doing that, but that's just how life is and has always been. You can quite quickly forget how lucky you actually are to just do what it is that you do, which is play music to people, make music, and you can make an okay living out of that. And that's basically exclusively what you do, because there's so many people getting up in the morning. I was absolutely one of them for so many years, where I hated the thought of even getting in my car to go to work. And there's probably millions upon trillions across the world, and, you know, feel exactly the same.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's almost exclusively that is the way it is. You know, you're meant to hate your job. You're meant to live for the weekend because you hate the week so much. So, like you say, if you can be in a position where every day you wake up and you don't dread it, you're doing something right, mate. You know.
yeah, it's a mad concept to think. I mean, I did it for close to 20 years, and I'd say for the last at least 7 to 10 years of that, I hated every aspect of what I did, you know, and there wasn't much I enjoyed about it at all. I hated it. It was long hours, paid pretty good money, but I was lucky enough where my circumstances, you know, weren't really constricting me, and I just thought something's got to change. But I feel so terrible for so many people that aren't able to do that, or they can't find it within themselves, because it's just it's a life of, like, you basically, it's just desperation, isn't it? You know, you're doing it because you have to, and my God.
Yeah, most people work through necessity, I would say, to put food on the table. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of jobs over the years, so I always consider myself lucky to be able to make a living through this.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough out there.
Yeah, it is. Mate, I want to get into your brain a little bit, because we're coming sort of to the last period. Have you got sort of like 3 pieces of advice you could give to somebody either getting into the music industry or is already in it, from your own personal experience?
There's loads there's loads personally I wish I didn't do. So what I would say to particularly young producers coming in, or not even young, just girls girls new to the game, just don't jump the gun. I did that, you know. Don't put out music just because you feel that's what people do. You know, if you end up putting out some substandard stuff, and everyone will, because it takes a while to hone your skills.
Yeah.
Like in any walk of life, you're not going to walk into this and make make well-rounded quality music. It literally doesn't happen, and if it does, I'm sorry to say, I'm suspicious.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it might get to the stage where the technology is so good, like everything else in life, that you can probably sit with an iPad and make an absolute jam. The day will come, but at the moment, I'm glad to say we're not there yet, and there's still a bit of skill involved. So that'd be my first bit of advice. Don't jump the gun. Sit on your music. You'll find as well that if you have something that you think's finished, it's not. There's always something else you'll learn. You'll go back to it. You'll add that saturation. You'll add that new bit of compression. That you know, there's so much going on that when you start, you might think you know about these things, and you might research them, but it just takes time, and it's your ear. You've got to trust your ear at the end of the day, because I'm in no way, shape or form, mate. I am not like technically minded when it comes to stuff like that. The way a lot of producers are, it blows my mind. I love watching those guys work, those studio wizards. I'm more of a creative type. I like to sample, add some drums, write a bass line, you know, and that's what I enjoy doing. So when it comes to mixing and stuff, it's the part of the process that I don't enjoy so much, but it is so vital. That you particularly now, labels really want a finished product. They don't really want to have to work with you and come back and forward. So that would say, just sit on stuff and keep working away at it, and also ask people that have already done it for advice. I did that, you know. Shout out to Tiptoes, one of the top producers I know. I just let him hear stuff, and he was just honest over the years. You know, he'd been at it for so long. He was honest. And then the day, you know, it was so good that when the day came and he just said, you know, that's solid, mate. You know, that's all. That's solid. Send that out. But unfortunately for me, I'd sent out a lot of stuff, and you know, it's not a disaster, but unfortunately, it's there forever now, mate. You know, I don't know, unless we have like another global disaster and some happens to the internet, it's there forever. So definitely sit on it, learn your trade. Something you're the king at, I think, is, and what you said, is get a sound and stick to it and master it. You know, you came into the game, you obviously invested in yourself, which is amazing, which is another tip I'd say. Just if you can, invest in yourself, do your courses, your education. But you know, you come in, stick to a sound, master your sound, and you'll grow quicker through that, I think, because if people know what to expect as soon as they see your name on a track, if they know what to expect, they'll probably just buy it. They'll cart it just because they're like, it's Tom Junior. He makes, like, you know, it's like he makes this kind of house music. I like that. I play that in my sets. Boom, it's in the cart and they're playing it out. Try to think if there's anything else that, you know, that's it basically. You know, the other thing is just prepare yourself for rejection, because it's part of the game, mate. You know, don't think you're going to come in, make a track, chap up Simon Dunmore at Defected and be on your way on a world tour. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. If it does, hats off to you, well done. But you know, realistically, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to put out a lot of music and get told that it's not for us. Usually that's what you'll hear. Even now, you know, is you face that on the daily when you're sending out tracks, because it's some labels, even, you know, they only work with a small group of artists, and it needs to be something really special to add you to the circle of artists. So it's not personal. Grow a thick skin and don't take it personally, and just keep making music, and keep the more music they make, the better you'll get at it. That's what I find.
100%, mate. Some great points, and absolutely resonate with me, that's for sure. It's an interesting one, because you're right. I think most producers, artists, whatever you like to call yourself, would say that they definitely have put out music that early on in their career they thought, I really wish I hadn't done that. But I'd like you say, I don't necessarily, it's not a deal breaker, because as the more your releases go on, as the years go on, people are they're unlikely to dig back. Not everybody's going to dig back that far. But, and I would say this is just to add on to the top tips, is if you have an interest in wanting to do it, once you feel your music is at a good level, maybe consider starting your own label, because I'm starting to see a bit more of a shift. I mean, it's been around for ages, you know, DJs, producers having their own labels, but I just seen a very recent one from that duo Shermanology. Been around for a while. Obviously they've got quite a unique thing where you've got they're making beats in the DJ, but they've got a vocalist in there as well. I don't know if they're both vocalists, but the big track that they've had, you know, that Boys in the Club that really crossed over, obviously they're a duo. I seen an Instagram post with them, and they said that 3 years ago, nobody would take our music, says it didn't have a place in the market, this, that, and the other. So we started our own label, we learned the business, we learned how to promote, how to do these things. And that track that crossed over was actually on their own label. So
yeah,
I think what I'd say to people who come across this is just, if you know, it's all art at the end of the day. If it is at a good standard and you can listen to it next to another track and think, yeah, this sort of, it's of that standard, then maybe don't necessarily let somebody else tell you that it's not good enough or it's not right, because there's no such thing in the arena we work in. But if you really believe in it, you're probably going to need to invest in yourself to get some sort of audience.
Yeah, that's sound advice. But like, you just going back to what I said, it must be of a standard.
Yes,
you know,
right, yeah.
Once, you know, like I would say, always take advice from people that have been in the industry longer than you if they're telling you that something's not right.
Yeah.
You know, if something like a little production tip that they're saying, you know, it's not right, I would always say take that on board and maybe try what they're saying. But like you say, like with the Shermanology guys, they were obviously really talented producers and their music was of that standard. And yeah, you will hear that. There's no place like, because there's very clear-cut genres on Traxsource and Beatport and stuff like that, you know. So with particularly your bigger labels that are volume labels that like to make money, they like to know where they will place that track, what genre they'll place it in, and where it will go from there. I've actually had that myself a few times from labels, or I don't know where we would place this in the stores.
Yeah.
Nice track, but we just don't know where we'd place it in the stores. But that's usually because I'm maybe getting carried away and I'm playing more MIDI on the keys and I'm making a bigger track than I normally would. That's something I always have to do, is just dial it back a few steps. I usually have 3 or 4 tracks within my you know, the layout of my track that I end up losing by the end of it, because you just don't need them. Sometimes less is more. But no, I mean, that's really sound advice. I see a lot of people starting their own labels and making a good go of it. We can't always lean on the bigger fish, because like I say, they work with close-knit groups of producers. They invest in them, they push them, and they get them touring, and they'll be constantly making money off these people, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a business at the end of the day. But you know, it's tough. It's really tough to crack that nut and become one of those guys. And it's like, I suppose it's like becoming a professional footballer. I heard the statistics, something like 1% of the kids that come through academies end up professional footballers. And it'll be something ridiculous like that as well. If you think about the millions and millions of people out there that are making music on the daily and making music of a high standard, and there's only going to be about 1% of us that break through to that level. So we need to, as an industry, find guys like yourself actually who invest in artists on Groove Soul and do real world promo and get it out to DJs' desks that are higher up in the industry, if you like, and we'll maybe play it out and play on Radio 1, Kiss FM, all these places that we want to be at the end of the day. So, but like I say, you know, you need to find somebody that's willing to invest in you. And it might be a guy like yourself at what we would consider a smaller independent label. But I mean, you're doing it, so it's doable.
Yeah, it's no, I appreciate that, mate. Yeah, like I heard a great quote. You know, Will Clark, the artist, DJ, producer. He does a podcast, and I was listening to his podcast, and he actually had an artist manager on there. I forget the guy's name, and he made it clear. He said, "Listen, my job as a manager is to fan the flames, not create the fire," and that's basically the world we now live in. It's very rare that somebody who just has a bit of talent gets picked up by these big labels or organizations and gets grown with them. They want to see that you're already creating something for yourself. And then if they like it, then they might come along and say, right, do you know what, we can take you to here. Or the same with artists and booking agents. But I'd say now the days are gone of somebody just being like a really raw talent, and you know, you really need to learn how to be almost a total package, don't you? Which is fucking hard.
Yeah, definitely 100%. And I think the thing that unfortunately the world we live in now, there's stuff like social media involved in that and becoming the overall package. You know, you need visibility. You know, you'd really need to have an audience before these labels would consider you. So, you know, it's something I'm not good at. So I'm not one to give out advice on growing an audience and social media and stuff like that, because I'm very limited to what I can do there. I put out any content I've got, but that's as far as it goes, you know. So I wouldn't comment on that. But I think, yeah, being the full package is something that you have to do now. They want a ready-made artist, a ready-made track. So yeah, just that's it. Sit on it.
Well,
and
I can
tell you,
100%. I can tell you one thing, and hopefully we both get there, mate. If you've got 20,000 people on your Instagram and you're on other social media platforms and you've got a good audience and they're engaged and it's real, not fake and that, and you're putting out music and it looks swish, I'm telling you, people are probably going to be knocking your door because they know that you're money at the end of the day. You know?
Yeah. I think that's when you become a viable business proposition, isn't it? Rather than just that guy's quite good or whatever. It'd be, he's a viable asset, a viable business proposition for a company of that size. But you know, like I said before, mate, I'm happy as long as I'm what I'm making is of a nice level, and I would love to pick up a few extra bookings throughout the year and do a bit of traveling, you know. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, for young people coming in that are really hungry, I would say, yeah, you're gonna have to do the social media and all of the stuff that comes with that now. You know, there's so much. There's courses as well, isn't there, that you can do to find out how to be media savvy in that way. Yeah. Again, not something that interests me. Like I say, I'm happy as here locked in this room.
Yeah, mate, if you want to try and, you know, if you want to try and move on to, you know, a really high level, it's impossible to not do the social media stuff in, you know, and really try and engross yourself into it. I mean, I absolutely hate it. I do my best with it. I don't enjoy it really, to be quite honest with you. I like connecting with people. You know, I like it. Yeah. You know, if people comment and, you know, and I like connecting with them and talking to them and all that sort of stuff. But the constant, you know, having to think about what am I posting today, you know, this, that, and the other, that is hard work, I've got to say. And obviously, if you become a big artist, some of that, you know, responsibility might be taken by somebody else. But even so, you know, even if you become a big artist, you've still got to show people what you're up to in your life. And it's something that I've personally found very difficult. I mean, I've succumbed to it now because I realised that it is part of, you know, I suppose what I do now, but I found it very difficult to, like, even stuff that, you know, from Instagram stories, it doesn't stay on there. You know, I'm from an era like yourself, mate, where actually DJs, producers and musicians, they didn't let people into every aspect of their lives, but it is different now. People want to be connected to you more than just the music.
Yeah, no, like I say, I'm more than happy to connect with people. I enjoy it. Like-minded people. It's a nice way to do it. And touch wood, everyone I've met in the industry has been totally sound and happy to help. So, you know, there's certain times, you know, we've all got lives to live. So, you know, there will be certain times that people reach out to you and you just go like, mate, I can't, there's no way I can commit to that, you know, and that's fair enough. But honestly, you should reach out to people,
Yeah.
because you'll find that a lot of people are really happy to help where they can as well.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, like yourself, I speak to people pretty much all around the world now, America, this, I mean, in the 90s, well, even before social media, that just never would have been an option. Do you know what I mean? It would have been like so rare that you'd be speaking to a record label owner in California, or, I mean, it just, yeah, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, there used to only really be one road. You know, there used to only really be one road, one journey that you went on to make it as an artist. Now I would say that everyone's journey is different.
Yeah.
And talking about, you know, putting out music at the beginning of your career, I suppose in a way it shows a journey that you've been on. You can say, like, that's where I was, and now the level of production is here now. So, well, I suppose it's nice in a way, but I do still, I would definitely say certain stuff, because I do still wish there was some stuff I could just erase from history.
Do you know what I'd have done? If I could go back, I'd have spent the first year just giving away free music. That's what I would have done. Yeah. Just giving it away to people and getting people into what I was doing, rather than saying, buy my new track, you know, here's my new track. Yeah. I'd just give it away. I
tried that at the very start, you know, and I think that one of the hardest things of that, again, it's about social media and building an audience. You know, you can go on SoundCloud and put music up there, and I mean, you can get 0 plays. You know, you can share it across all platforms, and it can get 0 plays. But you know, like you say, if it is handy, if it's something good that people will use, then you'll find it probably will get picked up. But again, it's just, you need to know how to navigate all these sites and stuff like that. I see they've become a kind of paid platform, paid promotions and all that. It's a bit of a ghost town over there now, to be honest. Even with like bigger artists don't seem to be bothering with it so much.
No, they don't, if I'm being honest with you. It's it was massive, wasn't it? SoundCloud and what have you for a while. You know, it was like almost like it's now it's Spotify, isn't it? That's like the barometer. That, like, if you've got big Spotify audience, then from what I've like listened to, I mean, that can almost like get you booked and stuff like that, which is a new thing. That's only happened the last year or two, you know, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I would say so. It definitely holds a lot more gravitas than like Beatport and Traxsource, where DJs shop. Because I say, it's really nice to know that you've been accepted by your peers and people are playing your music out, but you need to branch out and get like Joe Public listening to your music as well.
Yeah, hard work, man. Mate, we're coming to the end.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you, I've got to say.
Yeah, nice to talk to you, mate.
Yeah, mate. So for everybody listening, where can they find you?
Most of my handles, Instagram, Twitter, it's always @_BRRAK_, and it's BRRAK. So that's for my Twitter and my Instagram. I'm mainly active on Instagram. I find Facebook artist pages is an absolute waste of time, because it's all paid promotions. So yeah, I post a lot of content on my Instagram mainly, which is, like I say, @_BRRAK_. So you can find me there. I've got a Mixcloud, a SoundCloud, etc., where I will post the occasional mix and stuff, but it doesn't get much traffic, so it's not something I focus a lot of time on. Just spend most of the time making music and trying to get it signed, mate.
Yeah. Mate, it's been great speaking to you, and we've reached the end, so I'll catch up with you.
Yeah, there's so much more we could have spoken about, mate. So
we could sit here all day.
Need to do it again sometime.
Definitely, mate. Need a part 2. So, mate, I'll leave you to it.
All right, man. Good to see you. Take care, mate.
Bye-bye.